Hello and welcome to the I Am Evolution podcast. Spirit guide and soul sage Raina shares the knowledge of the universe to awaken and raise consciousness within. All of us have forgotten who we are and why we are here. But if we open our minds to new knowledge, we can use duality to achieve different perspectives to regain our unity. When we expand our awareness within, our possibilities become limitless. Let's begin to remember who we truly are and fulfill our mission and purpose to become conscious. And now, let's start the show.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's good evening already. You know, it's been, 3-4 weeks since we've been back. We've had so much going on. Anyways, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the I Am Evolution podcast. I'm your host, Raina. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, it has been crazy over here. We have had our AC go out, and of course, you guys know if you've ever been inside of a studio, it is hot. Plus, we are in Florida, so it is like extra hot. If you've never lived in Florida, whatever you're doing in the state of Florida, it's just whatever it is, like outside, it's like double that inside. If you have no air, it is terrible. So, anyways, I apologize for missing the last few weeks, but our AC just, the old unit has been over 20 years, and I kept it going for that long, but this finally went kaput, and we had to get a new AC unit and a new air handler and all sorts of stuff. But we are back up and running. It is nice and cold in here. It is nice and cool. The new AC unit's working great, and I am so excited to be back because we got a lot to talk about today. First, as always, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, DLive. The replays are in the links. If you're not familiar with our Facebook events, sign up at I Am Evolution Podcast on Facebook, and you'll see our events, and all the replay links are there. So, anyways, let's get into tonight's show. So, first of all, I do want to mention this one thing. With our show, this show is probably going to be about anywhere from 2 to 4 shows. And the reason why I said this, and we're going to space them out. We're not going to do 4 geometric pattern shows in the universe, or sacred geometry, whatever you want to call it. We're probably going to do 1 or 2 and then take a break and see how many we get through, because there's just so much information to go through. And if you know me and you know the show, I am not one to skimp on the knowledge. I want to go through things. I want to understand everything, and I want you guys to understand. I mean, sure, you can go on YouTube, watch a 4-minute video on sacred geometry where they go through something like really, really quick. And yeah, we're going to kind of touch on things, and we're not going to go in depth, but as the series goes on, we're going to go more in depth with this. But it is so important for all of us to understand what these patterns are, and why geometry is so important to understanding our consciousness and why we are here, the universe, and everything that we experience around us. And so if we can, like I said, we can go on YouTube, listen to a couple-minute video and say, okay, just sacred geometry, there's shapes that, make up the universe, and have such brief knowledge. But it's really, if we're really growing in consciousness, we have to truly understand what it is we are experiencing and how these experiences come to be. So sacred geometry is very important to us because it's a deepening of understanding not only us, but the universe and life itself. These are the natural laws that govern the whole existence of everything we experience. And what's funny about it is most of us don't know or even have a clue that these things exist. And I'll be honest with you, when I was younger, I hated geometry, especially taking it in school. I loved math, algebra, calculus, all that stuff. But I hated geometry. And what was funny is I was so good with mathematics, but I couldn't comprehend geometry. And actually, my first year I took geometry, I failed it. I had to take it again. I just couldn't grab the concept. And I was like, and I would think to myself, I was like, I'm supposed to understand this stuff, but I can't figure out slopes and integer, all this stuff. And the only theorem that I could grasp the concept, which is the one that I always repeat, is Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. And but like it was tough for me. It really was. Like I couldn't grab the concept. And as I got older and as I started to understand things in the universe, I started to see patterns that were applied in everything. If you just take a moment and look outside, not now, of course, because I want you focusing on me, but if you just take a moment and look outside, look at the world around you, look at everything that's inside your house, everything that's outside your house, all the universes, the galaxies, the solar systems, everything is in a pattern. Everything has patterns that are the natural laws that are governed by it. It doesn't matter. It could be the grandest, biggest thing in the universe, and it could be as small as a snail shell. Because what's funny is if you ever look at a shell, like a seashell or a snail shell, you'll see a pattern in it, right? They all have these patterns in it, and it's funny because if even on regular shells, all these grains of sand, right, get smashed up against each other, and they come out to be these beautiful seashells that we love to collect. And every time I go to the beach, I collect them because it just amazes me how the universe works. Everything is just one big pattern, one big geometric pattern unfolding upon each other, and it's all in harmony. One of the things I tell people, especially starting out in geometry and these type of ideas, is that if you want to take a look at firsthand of geometry in the universe, if you say, okay, well, yeah, there's geometry like squares and how they build houses and everything, architecture and everything. But one of the most fascinating things that I absolutely love is, and there's a bunch of videos on this actually, but there's one video that always gets to me, and I just absolutely love it, is that there's a lady that plays the violin, or a guy, and every time they play the violin, they have the sand on this black sheet, and the sheet is stretched out, and as they play the violin over the speaker, and that the speaker resonates, and all of a sudden the sand, depending on what note they have, forms a different geometric pattern, and these patterns are beautiful. And this is what's so amazing about the universe. People who are unconscious and are younger souls that aren't understanding this is why they buy so much into a god and something's going for them, and they see things as face value, and they always say, oh, what am I going to learn geometry for? What am I going to use this stuff for? Well, a matter of fact is you use it every day, whether you know it or not. But the fact of the matter is that it's not important to most people, because we've bought into society thinking that, that sports is the almighty holy grail in the world, and so is money and fame and everything. And so younger souls tend to buy into this. As we evolve, we start to be fascinated by the patterns and just the harmony and the balance of the universe, the creation itself. And if you want to become a creator, if you want to become this idea of whatever you want to call it, God, universe, source, whatever, and that you have to understand these patterns. You have to understand these geometric shapes, because everything that you do, including manifestation and co-creation and all this stuff, health, and that all play a part in this. And so if you don't really care about this stuff, well, then you're going to be trapped, as they say in the Matrix. You're going to be trapped in this idea that you're helpless, and that you need angels and spirit guides and all these beings and gods and goddesses to help you with your life, and because you're helpless. Because the advancement of the consciousness recognizes itself. Because remember, this is who we are. We are ourselves. And so understanding these these harmonious patterns in the universe. They're all mathematically measured, by the way. Everything in the in the universe, when you actually open up to it, it's all mathematically measured. And you just realize, you just start looking. You don't look at trees anymore, you look at the shape. You don't look at cars anymore, you look at the shape. You don't look at houses or people or anything. Even when I became a massage therapist, before I got my degrees in Oriental medicine and alternative medicine, I started to notice the patterns and in bodies and everything, because in the body, like with men have that T shape or that V shape, right? That they say the wider shoulders and all the muscles come down to a point, right? Well, that's a triangle, right? An upside down triangle. Women have a triangle too. Their hips, their hips are widened and goes down to their feet and everything, and that's another triangle. And muscles have shapes too. I mean, they're not the shape of an icosahedron or dodecahedron, but they all have basic shapes to them, and they all have a purpose to them. And this idea, you start to realize, well, wow, there's so much more out there that I need to learn and understand about life than just what I think I know. And that's the power of sacred geometry. That's one of the reasons why I really want to teach this to you. And like I said, this is going to be like a 4 or 5 part series, or maybe a 3-4 part, I don't know, because we're only going to try to do half hours at a time. Like I said, I know I always go over, and you know me and stuff, but we have to really go through each shape and understand each shape before we start getting into the things like the Merkaba and the and different shapes, and that then all of a sudden, what ends up happening is if we just jump and say, okay, well, the Merkaba does this, and there's other things, the flower of life and the Hamsa, and like these different things. But if we're not understanding what those interpretations are, I mean, we can go on we can go on the internet right here. I have a monitor. I could sit here and type something up and read something and say, okay, I got the knowledge, or I got the information, but I don't have the knowledge because I don't understand it. I may understand what the idea represents, but I don't understand what it actually does because I don't have the wisdom that goes along with it. And so that's the great thing about the sacred geometry. So as we're unfolding, it allows us to see, create, and send out all these patterns and all these thought patterns of creation. If you want to be a manifester or a co-creator, whatever you want to call it, like that secret went out and, just put your thoughts out there. Well, you don't realize that it's not your thoughts that are going out. It's these patterns. It's these platonic solids and geometric shapes that are actually being created. And depending on if you're actually a creator or not, are you fitting the right shapes in with the right thing, and are you being harmonious with it, or are you just slamming shapes together and then just getting back junk? And so it's much more than we think. But this allows us, when we start understanding the sacred geometry within us and how our body is created and why our physical body is here, and because as we know, everyone thought that, we're all atoms. Well, then atoms is all particles. Well, particles is all wavelengths and vibration, and the rabbit hole goes down. And when we don't understand that, and when we think that, okay, well, we start to expand our consciousness because, I've been sick, I was sick for so long. And I allowed my body to work through many healings and allowed all these things because all these things had all these experiences on them. And now I'm focusing on this, on putting back together the puzzle. I know you guys have heard me mention many times the Rubik's Cube, but this is important because if you want to be a creator, you and create your life that you want, or your health, or change the experiences that you're having, well, then you have to learn these shapes, because depending on the shapes, depending on how they're moving inside you and what you're creating, are you creating disharmony and stagnation, or are you creating, fluidity and harmony and balance? And that's the difference, because if you're creating disharmony and stagnation, well, then that's what we're going to live. And so many of us don't understand that. So this is why so many people have a hard time creating, because they don't realize that thought is really a geometric pattern. When a lot of people says, oh, you think about what you want. Well, yeah, you could picture it, but that doesn't always work because you're not understanding the full potential behind creation. When you're understanding something, then all of a sudden we start to get it. Like as we get into, I'm going to get into start the platonic solids, and this is the very basic fundamentals. Before you get into things like the Merkaba, the flower of life, the seed of life, and all that stuff, then what you say, what you have to start understanding is you have to go to the basics. Remember, if you are going to grow in consciousness with anything, you have to start at the basics. Just don't jump into things because it sounds cool. And some people may find this particular series boring because Raina's going into things one by one and that. But if you really want the knowledge, if you really want to excel at something, you have to start with the fundamentals, and that means understanding the very basics. If you don't understand the very basics and why they're here and what they're doing, then it doesn't matter. You can have all the talismans, all the power symbols. You could have this. Like most people, this is the Egyptian Ankh, right? And most people don't know what it is. Most people think, it's just a symbol like a cross and or a Celtic cross or something. It just represents their ideology of Egyptology. No, and it doesn't. This is the idea behind it was a balance between masculine and feminine, and it has this. It's like the Vesica Pisces in here. The Vesica Pisces is two circles with like a kind of like a weird oval shape, and this represents like the womb, birth, life, and everything like this. This whole sign comes from the tree of life, the seed of life. And if you don't know like what these symbols mean, well, then why are we wearing them? Because someone told us to, but we don't understand what it is that we have. Like I have tiger's eye. Well, I wear tiger's eye, right? It helps with psychic visions and all that stuff. Well, yeah, but that's because someone told you that. So these symbols are much more than what we understand them to be. And if we want to understand why they're here and what their purpose is, then we have to understand this is to remind us that we're God, that we're the source, that we're everything and anything, that we're the creators. These are all symbols to remind us. So I'm going to bring up a little thing over here. Let me see if I can bring that thing up. Okay. You guys see that? Yeah, I see that. Yeah, it's on the opposite side of me, so I'm hoping I'm not pointing at the wrong thing, You know me, I'm crazy. All right, so the platonic solids are, consist of 5 solids, and these are the 5 basic shapes that every one of your symbols, every pattern, everything that starts from these 5 shapes. And basically what platonic solids are, and I'm going to go into the boring stuff really quick, are basically shapes that have the same that have faces the same sides. So if you look up here, you see the tetrahedron, which is a triangle, right? All of them are equilateral. Equilateral means that they all have the same length, and so each one is 60 degrees. So they all have the same edges, same length, same angles, same degrees. The octahedron over here, which is the yellow one, has 8 faces. Octa means 8, right? And sometimes you'll see it represented like this one here, and other times you'll see it where it looks like a triangle on top of a triangle facing below. Sometimes you'll see that. That is also an octahedron. A hexahedron is what? Hexa means 6, right? And this one is 90 degrees. So the first 2 are 60 degrees. This one is what we know as a cube, or a square. A 2-dimensional is a square. A 3-dimensional is a cube. Just like the tetrahedron is a 3-dimensional triangle, right? And then you have the icosahedron, which is 20, and that has a value as well of 60. And then you have the dodecahedron. And I absolutely love saying dodecahedron. Sometimes I just say it over and over and over, dodecahedron. I don't know. I'm weird like that. But the dodecahedron, right, has 12 sides, right? And so you have all these different things, and they all equal 108. And so all these different shapes and symbols all have meaning. As you can see by this diagram, the tetrahedron represents fire, right? The octahedron represents air. Earth is represented by the cube, the hexahedron, the icosahedron is water, and then, as it says, the dodecahedron is ether, right? And so all these things, all these platonic solids have a purpose to them. All the shapes fit, when we're going to get into this later when we talk about Metatron's cube in another show, but all of these shapes actually fit into each other perfectly. It's the most amazing thing, and that's what kind of forms Metatron's cube, because all of these shapes, when they're together, represent, even separately, they represent the idea of perfect balance and harmony inside the universe. And this is why I find it so amazing, because when you look at Metatron's cube, if you actually isolate each thing, you'll see the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the hexahedron, the icosahedron, and the dodecahedron. You'll find all of these shapes in there. And then you could find other shapes like the flower of life, the seed of life, etc., and they all blossom from each other. And this is why it is so important. So a little history on here that, a lot of people, a lot of times will consider Plato or Pythagoras and stuff with the discovery of these platonic solids. But actually it was the ancient Egyptians that understood this stuff way before. Why? I'm not going to get into that, because we've had, there was a passing down. One of the things I want to say about the ancient people, we have a misunderstanding about ancient people. We tend to think that people in the past were just more dumb than people nowadays. And that's not true. People in the past had the same brains. Once we became like this same form, Homo sapien, and that we had the same brains as we do now. So the people back then, they just didn't have the technology we have today. So it's not like they were that they couldn't think, that they didn't have the ideas, or they weren't able to think of these things. It was the fact that we kind of think that, people in the past were dumb because we associate ancient with unevolved, with no technology, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we have a lot of technology, and there are a lot of people that that don't understand it as well. So are we dumb as well? So I want to say that when we look back in the past, we have to realize that people were smarter than we really do, that we really give them credit for. And so the Egyptians actually studied the platonic solids. They understood this, and obviously they did, because as I said, the Egyptian Ankh, which came from the seed of life, was mathematically, if you actually draw the seed of life and then you draw a bunch of other circles all within certain ratio, you'll actually all of a sudden discover you can trace out the Egyptian Ankh. And so Pythagoras, who was a Greek guy, and he went to Egypt, and he started learning the first three shapes. Eventually, it was passed to Plato, and Plato discovered, well, I see the first two. Well, we learned the first three, and all of a sudden now there's two other shapes, and that's where we get the 5 platonic solids. And that these shapes were originally stemmed from, and you can find them in stone artifacts, which is very cool. I always find things like that because you can't. It's undeniable when something has been written in concrete for tens of thousands of years. And this is something that we have to understand, that this knowledge isn't new. This knowledge we're discovering or rediscovering right now has been part of the universe since its existence. And so this is why it is so important. So these platonic solids, like I said, all correlate to a certain element. You got like I said, the tetrahedron is fire, the octahedron is air, the earth is the hexahedron, the icosahedron is water, and the dodecahedron is ether, right? And it's funny because me, being a Capricorn, I'm a sign of earth. And if you look at your body, it's funny because earth signs have square hands. I have a square hand. If you look at my palm of my wrist, and that I have a square hand, and I also have simian lines, see? And that, but all my hands are square. Why? Because I am a earth body. My body is more square. It's not shapely. It's built for like that tough, grindy, like you put me in like a physical type of job and I will outlast anybody. You put me in sports and people are passing out, can't breathe, and I'm getting stronger and like, let's go, because an Earth is a very grounded type of body. And so understanding that the type of body you are, the element, it's not just about astrological signs, because yes, each of these platonic solids right here and that do correspond to different astrological signs, but it all correlates to what it is, and we're all made out of each of these platonic solids. So every element on the periodic table as well is geometrically related to one of the platonic solids. And so again, I want you to really get this concept that every single thing that we're understanding comes from the existence of this. There is a person, Jonas Kepler, and they just, I think it was between 1578 or 50, like it was somewhere, it was a long time ago. I think it was like in the 1600s, and that discovered that when we were figuring out our solar system, that the ratio of the planets, 6 of the planets, because we didn't discover 2 like Neptune and Uranus and that till way later, but we discovered the first 6 planets, and what they did was they discovered that the first 6 planets were orbiting, and that like the same ratio as the platonic solids. They were like, wow, this is amazing, because the weight of the pattern of the orbits were the same as some of the platonic solids. And this was an interesting find, because they started to realize, well, there's something that's about this. The universe has to be more than what we're experiencing. And it has to be more than just empty space. Just like how we're now experiencing that dark matter and all these different things, like the theorem of dark matter, and the fabric of space, and that it's just not space. It's just not empty. There's stuff going all around it, whether we can see it or not. But everything in the universe, the way our planets orbit, everything, the way we orbit around our galaxy, and that's and just everything, the way the galaxies are, galaxy clusters, and everything represents, even our body. We dissect our body, and we notice it mimics a lot of the things in the universe. And I think when we're understanding that, we can start to expand our consciousness, because we can start to see that we're all part of that it's not separate. And this is the difference between someone that's growing in consciousness. Remember that we are this idea of, if you want to call it a God, universe, source, whatever, we are that idea. It's not separate from us. And that doesn't mean like, oh, there's a God out there and we're trying to be like it. We are that idea, rediscovering who we are through this thing called life. And that's one of the best things about the Vesica Pisces, is the Vesica Pisces, and we're going to talk about that later, is the creation of the universe. And actually, I think I might have a copy of it. Let me bring this down really quick so you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's the Vesica Pisces, right? The Vesica Pisces is 2 circles. And in creation, right, it was 1 circle. And in this circle, it said, okay, well, I'm conscious, I'm whole, right? Because the circle represents 1, it represents whole. And we're realizing we're conscious, and we're like, okay, I am what? Well, what else can I be? I'm conscious, but what else can I be? And so, just like mitosis, we split into 2 circles, right? And during those 2 circles, now we have a masculine side and a feminine side, right? I'm trying to do this because this picture is way over here. So, and we have a feminine side, and in that middle, we have this little kind of curvature type of thing. And what Vesica Pisces means is bladder of the fish, right? And this is representation of the creation of the universe. So when we talk about the Big Bang, in order for the universe to expand to this single point, what ended up happening is we came from 1 and pulled apart, created this womb in the middle here, and boom, the Big Bang exploded, and all of the universe just started with just going, and now it is what we have today. And look at our eyes. Our eyes are Vesica Pisces, right? Our mouth is Vesica Pisces. Women, your vagina is Vesica Pisces. The womb, right? Representation. So all of these symbols all have an idea of what we are. And everything about us matters, is perfectly designed based on what it's needed for. It's not just flawed, from animals to humans to whatever. Nothing has been done without an idea behind it. And this is something that I find very interesting. So what I want to do is I want to go back to the first, let's see. Let me go back to the first thing again. Okay. So we're going to talk about the tetrahedron, and then I'm going to be done for today. I know we didn't really get into too many of these because there's just so much information, but I really want you guys to understand before we get into the basics of what's going on. So the three basic shapes, the square, the circle, and the triangle, all have a representation. So the square represents matter. So if you're talking about the universe and you're talking about stuff that we're touching, our bodies and stuff, the square represents matter. The circle represents spirit, and the triangle represents our mind, right? And so the tetrahedron represents the mental and the mind aspect of life. The consciousness. When we're sitting here and we're being conscious, why is there, even in a lot of symbolism, there's even on American dollars, there's the triangle with the eye, right? That's to represent the mind, the aspect of the mind, the consciousness. And the one biggest thing that society has been doing, or that society has suppressing itself with, is the mental aspect, to realize that we're conscious ourselves. The people who are in control of society are trying to and squash that idea of the mind. That you need somebody to rely on, that you need something to do. You have to rely on a government, a God, a universe, angels, spirit guides. I go on Facebook all the time with these groups because I'm always trying to get a grasp of where people are at. And it's always like, and people are always like, well, you have information here, and a lot of it, it can be, I don't trust a lot of what I get on because it's all manipulated now. But to understand that the mind, the conscious mind, is represented by the tetrahedron. It's the fire, right? It's the fire within us to create. It's the fire aspect of life. And as we said before, it is represented. The triangle is represented by the tetrahedron, and its primary function is manifestation. So for us to create, we have to access and understand the tetrahedron. A few months ago, there was a tetrahedron activation, and I posted on my personal social media. I think I posted on I Am Evolution on the Facebook, but that. I showed a picture, and there was this huge triangle in space, these stars lined up perfectly, and there was this huge triangle, and I even drew the line so people could see it. And during that time, my consciousness was so open, and the activation was trying to awaken the people that are stepping up and becoming awake. There are many people that are going to still remain asleep because they're just not evolved yet in order to be there. Eventually, we all get there. We're all asleep at one time, and we all evolve to consciousness. That's how evolution goes. But its primary is to manifest. So if we're not understand, if we really want to juice up our manifestation, then we have to work with the tetrahedron. Out of all the platonic solids, this is the most creative change to our life. If we really want to change our life, then we have to start using. That's why the pyramids, even the pyramids in Egypt and all over the world, and that a lot of them were used as energy points, because the fire of energy, and placed in specific points all over, Earth, with the portals and everything to produce energy. They were massive energy producing factories, and a lot of us don't understand that yet. But the tetrahedron is one of the most solid foundations. It is besides the circle, it is the strongest shape in the universe, and that because it just the way it's constructed, and that it is built on strength. Each equilateral part of the triangle supports itself perfectly, and so this helps us support our personal power. If you ever think about when we're meditating, right? And I know we're going over 30 minutes. I'm going to try to get through this quickly. When we meditate and we sit in a lotus position and we go om la 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 la, right? What is our body the shape of? It is the shape of a triangle. Next, after this show, I want you to sit in a lotus position like you're going to meditate, and notice that the base of your body is flat and it goes up to your head. It is the shape of a triangle. Well, why is this? Because remember, what are we using to meditate? What are we using? We're using our thought, right? We're using our mind, right? And we're opening consciousness, and the fire part of the energy pushes us out so that we can expand our consciousness and grow. This is why that the tetrahedron and the activation, even the Merkaba, and we'll get into the Merkaba on another show, but even the Merkaba, what is it? It's two triangles, one upside down and one upright, right? And they're spinning opposite each other. I can't do it with my fingers, but you know what I mean. They're spinning opposite of each other, and when you get to a certain point in your meditations and stuff, you use the Merkaba as an activation of power. And man, if you don't shut that down, when you come back, you're loopy, you're spinning, you're like, whoa. And that because it's opening up the channel, it's strengthening who you are, and it's channeling that idea, and since it represents the mind, it represents the sixth dimension. So these ideas of creation are useful. And so when you're creating, you're manifesting, and you're doing these things to personal power, you're creating the stability of the tetrahedron inside of you. And that vibration, when these thoughts are actually geometric shapes. So you may see them as a thought, or you may hear them as a thought, but really they're a geometric shape going out. So as you're creating, it's like tetrahedron, and then hexahedron, octahedron, icosahedron, etc. And all these different things are going out so that you're creating, because that's the language of the universe. So as we become more powerful, we open up and expand our consciousness to be able to hear the way the universe speaks to us. It doesn't speak to us in voice; it speaks to us in geometric patterns. So if we're cloudy, if we're having issues, then part of what's imbalanced is this platonic solid, the tetrahedron, and that it's the triangle part of us is closed down, or we've shut down for so many reasons. We tend to chalk it up to this idea that these solids or like our thoughts are negative, and we're hurting ourselves with low vibration and stuff. Well, vibration is based on geometric patterns, and that's where vibration comes from. So it doesn't exist without each other. So we have to start understanding that. So when we're thinking clearly and we're coming up with new ideas, we have the tetrahedron inside of us activated, and it's spinning bright. It's harmonious. Remember, all shapes have to be harmonious. You can't just put shapes together, and it's almost like a kaleidoscope. If you ever look at a kaleidoscope and you turn, the shapes that fit together, they fit together harmoniously, and they form a new pattern. The ones that don't kind of just sit there in the kaleidoscope and wait to be turned until they fit into the other thing. This is no different. And this is why someone who is becoming balanced, someone who is becoming conscious, someone who is becoming physically strong is starting to see these. When I meditate, even today's meditation, all I saw, it started with the tetrahedron, then it went to the hexahedron. I'm having dyslexic moments here, guys, sorry. And then it went to the octahedron, and it went to these things and then it went to the circle, and it was opening up different things, because as you speak to the universe speaks to you, because you are it. And once you start to open that, all of a sudden things start to go differently, because you're not translating in that message anymore. So, but one of the last things I want to say about this is that the tetrahedron represents that balance and stability. Remember, if you think about the pyramids, let's just say the pyramids in Egypt, there are thousands of pyramids all over the world, but everyone knows the pyramids in Egypt. How long have they lasted? 10,000 years? I know people want to say a couple thousand. No, they're way older. The Sphinx is way older. It's like 12,000 years old at least. But the pyramids in Egypt, what is it? It is a triangle, right? It is a tetrahedron. It is stability. When you feel solid, when you are, when your life feels stable, it is because you have manifested the tetrahedron inside you, and you are working with that vibration, and so you feel strong. And when you're not, and the tetrahedron isn't working, or the vibration isn't working for you because you're buying into the limitations in life, then all of a sudden you feel like you're out of balance and you feel like you're unstable, etc. So the triangle is associated with the number 3, and it is the first geometric shape of the 3rd dimension. And that a lot of people don't know that, but I just thought that was a little fun fact. And as I said, it is the strongest structure in the universe. It represents all, even though I said that the square, circle, and the triangle represent matter, spirit, and mind, it does. But the triangle also represents by itself body, mind, and spirit. Again, remember, if you look at your body, and that a man's body is an upside down triangle, a woman's body is an upright triangle, and just even the body itself, whether it doesn't matter if it's a man or woman, and that represents body, mind, and spirit as well. And the upward point to a triangle represents raising consciousness. That's why pyramids are built that way as well, is because the energy, the life force of the energy, the universe goes through and up. That's where we kind of get the concept, oh, there's heaven above, or earth below, or it's that always that connection between the sky and the ground, because what it's really saying is our consciousness is what we call heaven, sky, whatever, up there, and the ground is our physical aspect of the life that we're experiencing. And that's why I always love getting into sacred geometry, because it is just so fascinating to think that these platonic solids are the foundation of the universe. And when you start to understand it, you start to see cycles in everything, and you start to see manifestation. A lot of people, understand that also the triangle is representation of the manifestation, or of what we call enlightenment. And of course, I'm doing my air quotes because what we understand about enlightenment isn't really exactly true, but these revelations and realizations towards the path of who you are all stem, and your growth all stem from the tetrahedron, this aka the triangle. And this is something that I think, but this is something that we all have to start understanding. So excuse me, I know it's 40 minutes. I'm going to stop here because we're 10 minutes over, because there's just so much information, and that we're going to go through the next couple over next week, and then I think we're going to take a break and do another show, and then we're going to go into the other ones, and then we're going to go into a bunch of the symbols and everything, because I know a lot of people really are interested in symbols, and they like, oh, tell me about the Merkaba, tell me about the Vesica Pisces and the Hamsa and everything else. And yeah, those are nice to know. But again, you have to understand the basics of what's going on and why they're there in order for you to understand the other symbols. And again, this is something that knowledge creates the foundation of. You can't build a pyramid if the foundation isn't strong or stable or accurate, right? So, all right, everybody, that is tonight's show. Let me take this picture down for you guys so you can see my beautiful face. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Again, like I said, this show is all about knowledge, and I want you guys to really soak up as much as you can. I know sometimes it can get a little gritty at times, and trust me, but I'm a nerd. I love this stuff, and if you guys are nerds like me, then you don't mind knowledge. You find that, like, to me, I find this fascinating. I can listen to this stuff all day, where most people would probably fall asleep in like 5-10 minutes. But that's why I do this show, right? But anyways, guys, follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/I Am Evolution Podcast. Our YouTube is a new YouTube channel, as always. It's youtube.com/I Am Evolution. Our TikTok is at I Am Evolution 33. Visit my website, soulandspiritguide.com. Sign up for the newsletter, guys, because you're going to receive and hear about recent events, special VIP access to certain shows like sessions that we do every Saturday. You need a specific code for that. They're really great shows. They're mini shows. They max out about 22 minutes. And then plus when we do have guests, you're going to get special access to special guest offers that are only going to be included for people who sign up for the newsletter. So that's always a plus. If you have any questions, comments, or anything you want me to talk about for in future shows on platonic solids or anything, email me at imevolution33@gmail.com. And always remember to believe in yourself. It's not our abilities, our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you and have a wonderful week, guys.